Now, Solange is well and truly back on Earth. She's talking about the 76th United Nations General Assembly. How's the press covering it, Solange?
Well, all eyes in the press have been on New York, as The National tells us that there were two main themes that emerged from yesterday's UN General Assembly, the first day. The United Arab Emirates paper says that both the global response to the coronavirus pandemic and climate change are, in the words of the UN Secretary General, quote, the greatest cascade of crises of our lifetimes. Now, COVID and climate change were not the only things being discussed. Of course, global power dynamics were at front and center, as is expected at the UN General Assembly, with much discussion of Joe Biden's speech. The French paper Libération actually today has a fun wordplay on the term pacifist, writing that Biden is pacifique, which literally translates to not that much of a cop anymore, at least referring to the U.S. president's vow to take a step back from intervening militarily in the world. But the Washington Post, well, they aren't buying Biden's line that for the first time in 20 years, the U.S. is not at war and that the U.S. has turned a page. Rather, the Post argues that American soldiers are still very much in places like Iraq, Syria, and Somalia, albeit on a smaller scale. And the paper notes that militant Islamist organizations are still fighting, so they get a vote, the paper says here. And contrary to Biden's words, the U.S. is still very much at war.
Another issue being widely discussed at the General Assembly and in the press, the arms deal, of course, between the UK, US and Australia.
Yeah, and today Le Monde has quite an interesting opinion piece written by a former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, and he argues that Australia has made some fundamental cavalier mistakes in how it has treated its ally, France. And he says that this deal is indeed simply about containing China, but that all it does is aggravate relations with Beijing, and on top of that, it turns away important allies. So some pretty strong dissent there from a former Australian prime minister towards a current one. Now, for Coco, the illustrator of Libération, it's Joe Biden who is calling the shots here. In her cartoon, Biden is telling Macron there's no room in the tub for Macron and Le Drian, as he, Boris Johnson, and Scott Morrison chase away Xi Jinping. And all of this is leading to a war of words that Chapat takes on with his cartoon for Le Temps, where Macron laments intolerable plots by Yankees, roast beefs, and kangaroos, to which his aide says, should we translate that into diplomatic terminology? And another aide retorts, that is the diplomatic version.
And all that from a frog as well. Let's switch gears now to some science news. The New York Times is diving into a hot debate in the medical community.
Yeah, and the debate is about the power of words, or about how commonly used medical terms can, for some, induce feelings of shame. The Times actually focuses on one such term, the pudendum, which actually even means shame in Latin, and it is commonly used to refer to the pudendal nerve, or the nerve that gives sensation in our nether regions. Well, doctors are saying that such a term, literally the shame nerve, it needs to be axed from the books. While others are saying, wait, hold on, we use this term all the time, to which other doctors are saying that there needs to be a debate to highlight that women of color, in particular, men as well, and women of color, but people in general are often don't go seek medical help because of shame, and that such terminology just adds to that, so we need to change the words we use.
All about the way you say it. Now for some environmental news. It's everything to do with gardens and also our bodies.
Yeah, Science Alert tells us that daycare workers in Finland, well, they added plants and forest-like spaces to their play areas in city daycares. And they found that within 28 days, so less than a month, the kids' immune systems jumped, their skin conditions improved, and their gut biomes in general, they were as high as those who visited forests on a daily basis. And that isn't the only article about the plus side of green spaces. The Conversation tells us about specialized gardens in nursing homes that not only increase sociability, but they also can slow the onset of Alzheimer's by stimulating the elderly's senses.
And finally from Solange, the press is saying it is time to dig in to camembert.
Yep, it is. This is for all those cheese lovers. A lot of French people out there are cheese lovers, myself included. So this is for all those cheese lovers out there. The Times tells us scientists have found dairy fat is actually good for you.
Hurrah.
Yay! It's important to note as well, as you can see there, it's not every day that you see the words "the French were right" sprawled on the cover of a British newspaper, but today the Times of London explains that France's love affair with cheese is actually very good for your heart, as eating more dairy fat, scientists found, lower your risk of heart disease.
It's impossible, isn't it? It's good for the heart.
Yeah, heart cheese.
Not so good for the environment, though. For
No,
other
yeah,
reasons.
cows, maybe vegetable
Impossible.
cheeses. Yeah.
Can't win. One day it's good, one day
Almond
it's
milk
not. Solange, thanks a lot. Solange with the papers on France 24.